All right, today I'm here with John. We're in Apollo in Vista, California, and I'm kind of excited to talk about, we've got something new from Apollo, and it would be the Precision-6 HVLP sprayers. I've got experience. I've been using the Apollo Precision-5 for a lot of years. Absolutely love it. My favorite HVLP comes along with the Atomizer 7700 gun, but now you guys have come out with something new. And John, could you just kind of go over what the big deal is about the Precision-6 and why somebody might want it?
The big deal, I think, is really in the paint contracting business is the thick, heavy paints that we normally spray are really difficult to spray with turbine systems. Typically, they have to be reduced, in many cases over-reduced, in order to get them to spray. So a lot of guys end up going back to their airless systems because they just can't get the system, the paints to flow through a turbine system. Well, what we found now is with the 6-stage motor, because it actually has about 12% more power than the 5-stage, than the outgoing 5-stage, right. It actually will enable painters to be able to spray almost the same paints that you could with an airless system straight from the can, but you can now do it with an HVLP. So we've even sprayed products like Renner 765, which is a real heavy primer, the white, and we've sprayed that straight from the can and had it flow out beautifully. So what it enables painters to do now is to be able to use an HVLP system to spray paints that typically could only be sprayed with airless.
Right. So you went from a 5-stage turbine to a 6-stage turbine.
Correct.
That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
Is there anything different, or why don't you just talk about some of the unique features of the Precision-6? And there's some things on it that I absolutely love, like the digital readout on it. I mean, you can control the pressure with a knob on it. What are some of the uniquenesses about this sprayer?
So yeah, I think the first thing that a lot of people notice is the LCD screen on the outside of the machine, right? And that serves as two purposes. The main purpose, obviously, is to tell you exactly how much air pressure we have, which these systems, we've never known how much air pressure we have because you just flip it on the switch and you assume you have all the right amount of pressure, but you really don't know. And so you either sprayed with it, and if it didn't come out right, well, you thinned it down a little bit, and that's the way you went. But a lot of the coatings that people spray don't necessarily need to have all the power from a 6-stage turbine. So reducing that amount of pressure to make it more applicable to the thickness of the coating that you're spraying is really an advantageous way to reduce the amount of overspray and make yourself way more efficient. So with this system, we can actually control the air pressure to an accuracy of 1/10 of a PSI, which is unheard of in the industry. Even from compressed air, you can't control a compressor that accurate. So we can control the pressure to 5.2 PSI or something of that nature.
Right.
And by doing that, we can get exactly the right amount of air pressure for any given coating and get the perfect atomization without having wasted paint. Right? We can easily spray coatings with too much pressure, and we'll still get a nice atomization, but you won't get the efficiency. And that's what the precision system's all about. It's about efficiency and making sure that what you're spraying is sprayed at just the right amount of pressure, but not too much, so that you're saving those coatings and putting that money in your pocket rather than blowing it around the customer's house.
Isn't there another thing that's unique with the precision system, that when you stop spraying, release the trigger on the gun, that the motor stops running, but internally it continues to cool itself with a fan? Isn't there something like that with it?
Correct. That's our patented power pause feature. And what the power pause does is it actually slows down the motor to so what do we call a cool down or a tick over mode, so that it's still drawing the cool air into the motor to cool it down, but it's not stagnating the air so that it radiates that hot heat inside the steel case. And so by keeping that air moving through the motor, we can actually not only keep it running much cooler when you're not using it, but also keep that temperature down so that when we are using it, we keep a more moderate temperature, which increases the pressure and the performance from the system.
And I noticed, like, you have filters on the front and back, and they kind of look like automobile filters. What is the importance of these filters, and the fact that they are kind of similar to an automobile filter?
So having proper filtration on these systems is really, really important. A lot of manufacturers will put nice filtration on the air that's going out to your spray gun, but then they neglect to put proper filtration on the air that's the intake for the motor cooling.
Right.
So that's the reason we have our what we call quadri-clean filtering systems, because we start with a foam filter, which is made to just filter out your larger particulate, like your dust and dirt and things like that might be floating around on the floor or in the air. But then you really need a finer element here, which is like your automotive filter. And that's why we use these pleated automotive filters on both sides of the case, because the air going in and cooling the motor is equally as important to be clean as the air going out to your spray gun.
Right.
You don't want all the overspray being sucked in through the filter and coating the armature of the motor.
Right.
Things like that is going to take away from the life of the motor and cause it to not perform properly.
Right.
So filtration is really important.
And I noticed like you have fins, and I assume these are allowing air to go in and out of the system itself. And I noticed there's a lot more of those fins on this unit than other units I've used from other manufacturers. Why is there more, and what's the importance of that?
So it's not because we think cooling louvers are cool.
Right.
But they actually are there functionally, right? So on the back side of the machine, or the side of the machine here, we have 14 louvers. On the side, we have 12. So a total of 26 cooling louvers. So it's important as that hot air or that cool air comes in, cools that motor, that it's pushed outside the box as quickly as possible.
Right.
Other systems out there either stagnate the air by shutting off the motor, or they don't shut it off at all, in which case the heat just keeps building inside the machine when it's not being used. So with the power pause, we not only pull down the RPM of the motor and run it to keep the motor cool, but then by having all these cooling louvers on here, we build up positive pressure in the box, which now pushes out that hot air out of the box. And by having 26 cooling louvers, it gets that hot air out of the box as fast as possible. And everything with these machines is keeping that heat down. Right? The cooler we keep these motors, the more efficient they are, and the better, the longer lasting they are. Right? So keeping them running properly and cool is super important.
In my understanding, also keeping the machine cool, keeping it running cool, is also important to the application of the coating, being applied, correctly and not having issues with that also, right?
Absolutely. The longer you spray with these systems, typically the hotter they get. Right. And so what Apollo has done is really worked with the manufacturers of the motors to make sure that we are building the proper cooling into the motors so that as they ramp up the heat, they actually stabilize. And so it doesn't matter how long you use the system, because the heat is actually stabilized. And so the consistency of your performance beyond that is going to stay the same. Whereas other systems are out there, because they don't have the same design and they're not getting the heat out of the inside of the box as fast, they end up exasperating the heat. So the longer you spray, the more heat you generate. Right. And with these systems, if you generate more heat, you actually start losing your air pressure quite considerably, right? So you can imagine if I'm spraying for a couple of hours and I've got all these cabinet doors I've got to spray, the first 15, 20 minutes of them, they probably look like glass and they lay out beautifully. Then after time, maybe 15, 20 minutes as that machine is heating up even more, your performance is going downhill because your pressure is dropping, and the air coming out of the gun is getting hotter and hotter, which is now having an adverse effect on your finish drying as well.
And another, you got this unit sitting here in front of us. We're right here in your factory. I got the tour of the factory. I was watching you guys assemble these things. They're built right here in your factory in Vista. And I was watching them being tested electronically, and every single unit gets hooked up to a computer system and gets calibrated. Can you explain a little bit of that process of what's going on?
It's no good if you have a digital output that doesn't represent what your actual air pressure is, right? So we have a gauge that we've set up on the output of the machine itself, so that we can calibrate and make sure that what you see in the screen is actually what you're going to get on the exit hose. So we go through a calibration process, and then we also have certain parameters that the motors must meet specifications for in order to be put into a machine and sent to a customer. Every now and again, we'll find a motor that doesn't meet those specifications, so we'll actually put that on one side and send it back to the manufacturer. Even though the motor may run just fine, but it doesn't give us the proper pressures and what we're expecting out of the motors.
So every single unit that goes out of this factory is tested and meets all the standards and tolerances.
Yeah, we have a checklist that we have to go through, and then we have, as you said, our computer system that we hook up to it, because these machines now are getting very sort of technology built. We need to be able to have computer now to be able to, it's just like diagnosing your car anymore. Not like the old days where it was a carburetor and a fuel filter and a few things and you could figure it out. Now you have to hook a laptop up to figure it out. So It's getting that way with these. I think the technology in these systems is building up to where it's actually making it a lot better for the user.
Right.
And that's really what we're trying to do, right? We're not trying to put technology behind the machine just for the sake of putting technology into it.
Right.
We put technology into the machine that's going to benefit the user. And it's going to be and usually in the way of keeping the motors running longer and giving you a better experience
Right.
when you're using it.
And another thing I want to talk about is you have the 7700 atomizer gun. This is what comes standard with the Precision-6. I know this has won some awards. I mean, when you just look at it, touch it, feel it, it feels like high quality. It's an absolute amazing gun. Can you talk to the audience about a little bit of the uniqueness about this gun, some of the key features about it?
It starts with the machining process, right? And how you machine the parts. A lot of these parts that we make for our spray gun are made by people that make parts for Boeing and McDonnell Douglas. They're aerospace people.
Right.
And so they're used to working with real tight tolerances on parts and things like that. And that's the way you get a quality gun. I could make this gun for half of what I do if I just loosened up some of the tolerances, threw a few O-rings in there, and made it, with less control over the machining process.
Right.
But it all starts, if you want a performance, it's like buying a Ferrari, right? What's the difference between that and a Ford? Is the machining and the energy and the engineering that goes into that quality of a car. And so the driving experience that you get out of a Ferrari is way different than a Ford, right? And that's kind of the same thing. When we machine the parts and everything fits together perfectly, we don't need to make up for things with O-rings. We don't need to seal things with other parts. So it keeps it a little bit simpler. And then when everything fits together perfectly, it just works right. Right. And that really come down to, so the machining of the air cap and the machining of the body and the insides of all the parts in the spray gun is key to having the performance in that at that Ferrari level.
Yeah. I mean, I'd definitely say that looks like the Ferrari of all guns out there, or even the Lamborghini. It absolutely looks amazing. And it actually works just as good as it looks. So there you have it. That's the Precision-6. It's now available. It's brand new.
It's available.
So it just come out in 2023?
We just introduced it at the woodworking show last year in 2023.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you are in the market for a 6-stage turbine, this is a great option. What does it sell for?
Retailing right now for $26.99, and that comes with our Plus package, which is a couple extra needles and nozzles, the atomizer spray gun, your choice of cup assembly, 32 feet of hose, and a couple of other accessories that we put with it. So it's a full package. All you need is the paint to put in the gun.
And I believe you guys, Apollo, another thing, you guys are a family-owned and operated company, right?
Correct. Yep. We're in second, going on third generation.
Awesome.
So yeah, my father founded the company back in the late 70s here in California. And I've been running the company now for 26 years this year.
Awesome. There you have it. The Apollo Precision-6. So I'm here with John Darroch from Apollo. John, we've got the Apollo Precision-6 here. I have one of these units. It's absolutely amazing. You've got 4 new features with the Apollo Precision-6. You've got the black gun, which is absolutely amazing. Yep. You have a new green hose. You have a new compressor, and it is a 6-stage turbine. So we've got the pump, John. So tell me a little bit about the new pump.
So as you know, Chris, we brought out the Precision-6 now 2 years ago, actually here at the AWFS show. And it's been a great machine, but we've also made some improvements to it. As you pointed out, 4 new features that we've got. The newest one, which is right up for the finalist at the Visionary Award here at the show, is our Black Edition 7700 gun, which has some new features on it, including our fan control ring and a few easier maintenance features that we've built into the inside. So always looking to improve our spray guns. Then we've got the new green hose that's attached to that. A lot of you guys have been asking for something that's a lot more lightweight and a lot more flexible, especially those guys that are spraying the heavy bodied 2K polyurethanes. And this hose fits that bill. It's super lightweight, super flexible, really high durable.
Yeah, so I noticed, so I started using this lime green hose definitely is a lot softer. I love this thing. It's a great upgrade to the Precision-6, so that's pretty cool.
Yep.
So we've got a new compressor.
And then we've also got a more beefier compressor that we put onto the system now, so that it can fill the tank faster. So it actually puts out almost double the CFM of the older style compressor that we had on here. So another huge feature upgrade for the 4500 system when you get it with the Precision-6. And then last but not least, we have the upgraded 6-stage motor. And as many of you guys know, Apollo is known for building the very best quality performing systems. And so we're using that same 6-stage motor that a lot of our competitors use, but by building it into our design case with our cooling louvers and our quadra-clean filtering system, you're getting a much higher spraying pressure because you're running the motor at a much, much cooler temperature.
You know, for somebody that has a 5-stage turbine, this is a 6-stage turbine. In about a minute, can you tell me why I would want a 6-stage turbine versus a 5-stage turbine?
Just the atomization, really. If you're out there and you're spraying cabinets, you're spraying furniture with a lot of this heavier bodied, solid, high solids products nowadays, you really need the 6-stage motor. The 6-stage motor, even though it's on paper only about 12% more powerful than a 5-stage, that 12% makes a huge difference. It's like that last little bit. You know, HVLP's always struggled to compete and keep up with airless products. And now with the 6-stage system, we can do that with a lot of these high-end woodworking finishes.
Yeah, I noticed like with some of the primers that I used to use from, say, like Renner,
Yeah.
I had to thin those primers. Now I don't have to thin those primers like grain filling primers. Absolutely amazing. I love my 6-stage turbine. So there it is, Apollo's new 6-stage turbine, Precision-6 sprayer with 4 new features on it. Absolutely love it. So check it out, here is the Apollo new Black Edition 77 atomizer gun. Absolutely amazing. Check it out, they got 4 new features on their gun. One of them I absolutely love. They got markings now on the fan indicator ring now, so when you turn it, you know exactly where you're at. That's pretty dang cool. They've got now a distributor plate now with a single hole that you can't get on backwards. Absolutely love it. And of course, the matte black finish, a scratch resistant finish that's matte black, looks absolutely amazing. And one other thing, they've got an oversized bushing inside the trigger now, so the bushing itself is a lot larger, it's gonna last longer, and it's not gonna come out. 4 new features of the 7700 atomizer gun from Apollo. You gotta check it out. Best gun you'll ever use. So what does the Apollo 7700 atomizer gun have in common with Burt's Bees? Well, I got a pro tip for you. You know, when it's really frustrating picking the paint off of your tip right here that's dried on there, when you've gone off and done something, you got off the lunch, come back and you're trying to get it to spray and it's clogged, guess what? You can just take some chapstick or Burt's Bees, take it, rub your finger on it, rub your finger on the tip, get some of that chapstick, some of that lip balm on the tip. Paint won't dry on your tip now. So now you won't have that frustration when you pull your gun, nothing coming out. Pro tip. So Apollo has a new remote start for their Precision-6 and quite frankly for all their sprayers. So check it out. My spray gun's sitting here, my unit's sitting there. I can be up to 30 feet away and now I can just turn it on, click of a button. Just turned on just like that. So you plug this into the wall, your sprayer plugs into that, you can remote start it. Now it's going, check it out. So now I'm done. All I gotta do is hit off. Turns it off. The new remote start for Apollo HVLP sprayers. So John, you know, I like pot. What do you like?
I like top cups. I was trying to avoid that one.
Hey, we're here at Apollo Sprayers in Vista, California. So we're going to be talking about the Apollo 7700 gun and two options. When you buy this, like if you go to Paint Life Supply Co. and you choose to buy, say, Precision-6 or Precision whatever. So you have two gun options. You have cup gun below, and you got a cup on the top, gravity fed, or pot. So is there anything specific you call this? This is called what?
We usually refer that either to as a bottom cup or incorrectly, a lot of people from automotive call it a siphon cup.
Siphon cup.
Typically, those were bottom cups like the old Binks days. Wouldn't have the pressure tube on it. We also have the pressure tube for the turbine, but so it's not technically siphon, but they still call it a siphon cup because that was traditionally what a bottom cup was in the old days.
Okay,
right?
and so we got a siphon cup, we got a gravity cup.
Yep.
How do I go about choosing which one that I would use?
Well, that's a good question. So a lot of it really comes down to preference. Really, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's two main things you want to consider. First of all is the preference, right? So first of all, how much paint reservoir do you need, and what feels good to you, right? Does the balance of a top cup or the balance of a bottom cup feel better? Because that's a lot of it, right? When we're holding this gun in our hands for a long time, it needs to be comfortable, whether you're holding a quart or in this case, 600 cc's of material. You want to be able to feel comfortable with that, right? And so that's the first thing you want to look at is what your personal preference is. Now, beyond that, there are some types of paints, especially nowadays where we're doing a lot of these waterborne, Italian, even domestic waterborne products nowadays that are really thick on really heavy materials. They don't like the bottom gun because even with the pressure, we're fighting gravity to get the material up to the nozzle. And so having a gravity-fed cup for spraying those really thick, heavy materials is really necessary because we not only need gravity to help us, but we need the pressure and gravity to help us. The main reason is with the turbine systems, we don't have the pressure that a lot of conventional compressed air systems and that have, and as a result, they form a siphon in the front of the gun which actually pulls your paint into the nozzle. Because of the low pressure with the turbine systems, we don't have that siphon ability anymore, and that's why we have to pressurize the cup. I could spray certain very thin materials with a gravity cup and no pressure, but I'd end up with a very tiny, small fan pattern, and I would end up with a very slow flow rate on my material. So in order to keep the flow rate and the fan pattern sizes equivalent to what you would get with other types of spray equipment, you need to have the pressure on here to be able to realistically use it in an everyday environment.
Would you say that the gravity cup has maybe an advantage if you're only had small amounts of really expensive material using a gravity cup versus a siphon cup?
For sure. So with the bottom cup, you're always going to be left with a residue of material that's left over because even with the angled pickup tube, it's not going to pick up all the material in there because once the pickup tube is no longer immersed in the bottom in the paint anymore, there's nothing for it to pull it up. With the gravity, and that's one of the nice things is you can just put a little bit of paint in here just to do a small job and be able to spray it out.
Could you spray upside down with the gravity cup?
Not very well.
Okay.
And so to some extent, we get a good seal on the gasket here, so you can tilt them to a side in many cases. Would I ever want to go upside down? No, because I'm now going to have the material going back into my air tube.
Right.
The only way you could go upside down is if you wanted to introduce a remote or a bag system for the gun, which would be similar to like the 3M PPS. And then you eliminate this contact with the air and the paint together, and then we're able to use that to be able to tilt the gun in any direction we want. But as a traditional cup, both the bottom and the top cups do seal pretty good, so you can tilt them to an angle, but you wouldn't ever want to put it upside down.
I think I've been spraying with a siphon cup for quite a while now. I think I just personally prefer it because I think the gravity cup just gets in the way of my view.
A lot, and it also has a lot to do with the types of things that you're finishing too.
Right.
So if I'm just going to spray a tabletop and I just need to spray all day long like this, then either type of cup will work pretty well. But if I need to get into tight spots, say in the backs of a cabinet or something like that, and I have that, so I always tell somebody to look at the overall footprint of your gun, right? You've got almost half as much paint in this cup as you do in this cup, but you see how much taller the overall height of the gun is. So you can imagine if I was trying to get this into some kitchen cabinets or something, into the back inside the face frame, I'm not going to be able to get this gun in there nearly as easily as I can get this gun in there, just because of the overall size of the gun. So that is a little bit of another consideration too.
And you guys do have, you know, a third option. I mean, for one thing, you can either choose either gravity fed or siphon, but then if you purchase like the Pro LE with remote pot, doesn't that just eliminates?
Then you just eliminate it.
Right.
Yeah, that's the great thing is you eliminate the cup, so you not only have now a smaller footprint, which even is easier to get into cabinets and things like that, but now you also have a larger quantity of material that so you can spray for longer periods of time without having to stop and refill the cup.
And I think the advantage of a remote pot is you can spray upside down.
You can spray in any direction you want, and you don't have the weight too.
Right.
So you remember when you're filling up a cup, even if it's a smaller cup like this, there's still a lot of weight in here, particularly with the heavy latex and waterborne paints that we're spraying nowadays, and those weigh a lot. So when I can remove that weight and put it back on the machine, and all I'm holding in my hand is a gun and two hoses, makes it a lot more comfortable for me and ergonomic for me as well. So I'm not going to get as much pressure on my wrist, and my arm's not going to hurt as much at the end of the day.
So there's some really good information on, you know, helping you decide, you know, what to choose. A gravity, siphon, the other one, the remote pot. When you buy that, you actually get to choose either one of these that goes along with it too. So that gives you two options if you're choosing like the Pro, Apollo Precision-6 Pro LE with remote pot.
Yep.
There you go.
You got that.
Got it.
So one of the other things I tell people too is, you know, the unique thing about the Apollo atomizer gun is that you don't necessarily have to choose which cup you want, right? You don't have to buy another spray gun because you want to have one cup with the bottom cup on it and one gun with the top cup on it. So now I can buy one gun and I can buy two cups and I can put whichever cup on it for the job that I'm doing. So I have the complete versatility with one gun body to be able to use it in any of those three different, you know, bottom, top, or out of a pressure pot.
And that's pretty simple because that's like, this is a cap right here. This just unscrews.
Yep.
It'll go down here on the bottom. This is going to go right on the top. Pretty simple.
It's that simple. It takes a couple minutes to swap it, and you can use pretty much any size cup. And we actually have 3 different bottom cup sizes that we make. The cord is the largest, and we make 4 different up top size cups too.
And that's something I didn't know.
Yeah,
I just
so we have
something.
them all the way down to a little 3-ounce cup that we use for automotive finishing, and then we have them even bigger up to 1,000 cc, which is basically a quart on top of your gun.
Perfect. So there you go. If you have any questions or comments about what cup to choose, about the Atomizer 7700 gun, what we talked about today, just leave your questions or comments down below. John or I would love to answer your questions. If this has been any help, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next time right here on Paint Life TV. Out. So today we're going to be talking about the OS control valve on the Apollo 7700 gun. Now, I'm here in Apollo in Vista, California, and I actually learned something new today. I actually got to see the OS, what it's actually doing inside, and I started asking you questions about it, and, you know, come to find out, I've probably not been using it correctly. So John, can you tell us what the OS valve does, control valve, and its use, when I would use it and when I wouldn't use it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the OS, or overspray control, is basically a little device that we built into the top of the spray head to help you control the air pressure from your turbine system. Traditionally, turbines have not had any way to control the air pressure or vary the speed of the motor. And so you weren't able to reduce the amount of pressure. So if you were spraying a very thin material, you'd have to spray it with the full pressure, which would give you a little bit more overspray and a little more wasted material. So by having this little device in the gun, we can actually restrict the airflow through the spray gun and be able to, it's kind of like a cheater valve on your compressed air guns, right? So it's a way to kind of more fine tune it. So we really invented this for turbines that don't have pressure control on the machine itself. Most of our turbines now, Apollo systems, either digitally or analog somehow control the motor speed, which ultimately controls the pressure. So when you're using this with the Precision-5 or any of the Precision systems or any of our power systems, you're going to just back this all the way out, so basically counterclockwise until it stops, and just leave it there like a blanking clap, because it's always better to adjust your pressure on the machine than it is through the spray gun.
Right.
Because you don't want the machine just running away, creating a lot of extra pressure that you don't need, and you're bleeding that off, and the machine is still wearing out. So by reducing the pressure through the machine, I actually slow down the motor, reduce the heat, and add a lot more life to the motor on the machine itself. But if you don't have that ability, and your machine only has an on-off switch, then this is the only way you have choice to be able to control your air. So the way this works is I screw this, I can slowly reduce this down, and as I do, this is your air passage that's coming through the gun here. And as I increase this screw, it's sending this plunger into the air passageway and slowly restricting the airflow. So you're not only reducing the pressure, but you're also reducing the volume of the air through the spray gun as well, which is important to do both. So I can use this as a way to sort of cheat my air pressure and reduce the air pressure through a fixed powered turbine system. But again, for most of our systems that we have nowadays, most of them all have variable speed control on them. And so we just back it all the way out, and we're more or less using it as a blanking cap.
So I have 2 units. I got a Precision-5 and I got a Precision-6. So pretty much I can actually remove that, put a cap on it,
Yeah.
and I'd actually be better off than actually using it then, maybe.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to use it at all, because remember, with your precision machine, you have the control to be able to reduce that pressure to an accuracy of 1/10 of a PSI. So that's going to be way more accurate than trying to reduce it through a mechanical means of reducing pressure through the gun.
So there you have it. That's the OS control valve, the Overspray control valve, what it's used for, how to use it. If you got any questions or comments, about that valve, just leave it down in the comment section below. We'll try to answer them as soon as we can. See you right here next time on Paint Life TV. Out. Hey, so this is one of our videos, our furniture flipping course videos that I've posted right here on YouTube free. Now, if you want to see our whole entire course, you can go check it out at paintlifesupply.com. The whole course includes over 40 videos. It starts from how to market yourself to flip furniture to actually how to repaint furniture, how to prime it, how to sand it, how to flip it, basically, and make money doing so. Hopefully you enjoyed this free video from our furniture flipping course, and go check out the whole thing at Paint Life Supply. So today I'm going to be talking about HVLP spraying and setting up an HVLP gun to do furniture flipping. I've got an Apollo 7700 atomizer gun right here. So I'm going to be going over a few of the features on it and showing you how I set this thing up. The unit I'm using an Apollo Precision-6 HVLP sprayer right there, and it has a digital readout. That's where you actually set the pressure when it comes to spraying. On a lot of HVLP guns and setups, you would be adjusting the airflow right here. But one of the nice things is about the Apollo, I'm just gonna back this thing all the way out. I'm gonna have full airflow coming to it. I'm gonna make my micro adjustments, over there at the turbine. I have figured out spraying furniture, cabinets, everything I spray using 2K polys, I sprayed at 7.5 PSI, so I never have to make an adjustment there. I never have to make an adjustment on the gun right here. Right here, this is my material flow. This is what's gonna send more or less product out of the cup right there. So I'm going to, typically I start off, I'm gonna turn this all the way in to the minus right there, so there's no material, and I'll start backing it out to get more material, and I'll make those adjustments as I'm getting this thing set up. I do have a dial right here, this dial right here. This thing is gonna turn it from a circular pattern. If I open it wide open, it'll turn it to a wide spray pattern, and I can dial it in anywhere in between. So it's gonna go from circular and begin starting to get wider and wider as I turn it. So if I turn it counterclockwise, it's gonna be a small circular pattern, and the circular pattern will get smaller and smaller with less material. So if I want that circular pattern to get bigger and bigger, I'll take and start sending out more material. I got my cap right here. The cap will rotate where I can take my pattern, spray it vertical or spray it horizontal just by simply turning the cap. Right here, I've got a little feature right here. This is going to be the pressure relief valve right here. So when I'm done spraying, there's pressure in here, 7.5 PSI pressure. I don't want to just release this and let the pressure come out through there. I'm going to turn this little valve. It's going to release the pressure out through the valve, and then I can open up the gun right there. Now there are multiple options you can use. This is what we call a siphon feed cup right here. This is what I predominantly use, or you can use a gravity feed cup right here. Gravity meaning gravity is what's taking the product and sending it to your gun with pressure coming up through the top of the gun. Siphon, it's siphoning it up from the bottom, from pressure being put into the gun, coming to your tip. It's really personal preference. with the gravity feed cup up top right here, you can have really tiny amounts of material that to spray with it. So if you got something you're spraying really small and you don't need a lot of material, one of the advantages is you don't need a lot of material to get this thing spraying, just tiny bits. If you're spraying inside of cabinets and stuff, it gives you a smaller profile to be able to spray inside of like the cabinets or inside of drawers, etc. This is a larger profile right there, but this with the gravity feed, it kind of blocks my line of sight, and when I'm spraying and stuff, and it's kind of one of the disadvantages that I don't like. I predominantly use a siphon fed cup. This is my setup right here that I use right here. It does have, if you're curious what this thing is, so this is the air comes in. This is sending air down through this one-way valve into my cup. That's actually is what's pressurizing the cup and sending material up through the intake tube of the gun itself. If you begin to spray and start to tilt this thing, way sideways where the paint could actually go up inside, this thing, and the valve's not working correctly, you can end up sucking, paint up in there. It's happened to me, multiple times. You could pull this off, clean it out. The paint, if it dries in there, that you'll mess up that one-way valve. I always have extras of these in case paint gets up inside there. I just switch it out, really quick. So there's some of the features about the gun. Now when it comes to the needle, nozzle, and cap, the needle, when you're pulling the trigger, there's a needle that's sliding back and forth. The nozzle, right here, I'll pull off. Here's your nozzle right here on the end, and then this is your cap. So when it comes to furniture refinishing, I'm using 2K polys. There's a lot of them out there, polyurethanes. 1K meaning you're not adding anything to it, you're using it right out of the can. 2K means you're catalyzing it to increase the durability, hardness, scratchability, a lot of other things, water resistance. So 1 and 2K polys. All of them that I use the same needle, nozzle, and cap. So it really simplifies it. You don't have to actually switch this out ever. And I've come down to using the 1.3 needle and nozzle setup. So they go together, the 1.3 needle and nozzle. And then I use the BHS cap, the gold cap. So the BHS cap is a high solids cap. So high solids product. So that's a combination. Now you can use larger needles and nozzles if the products are thicker, or smaller needles and nozzles if the products are thinner. Like lacquers and stuff, thicker. If you're using over-the-counter products like Emerald Urethane or Benjamin Moore Advanced, if you get stuff that's really thick, you would have to start to thin out your product, possibly, if you're using a 1.3 needle and nozzle set. But for the products I use, been using this same needle and nozzle set for years and never had to actually, use anything different right there. So that's a little bit about needles and nozzles. So when it comes to setting up your gun too, so I'll just give you a little handy little tip right here. So I'm going to release my gun. You can see my intake tube with the screen on it. It's facing forward, so it's coming down and facing forward. You can have it facing in a lot of different directions and actually adjust that. You would loosen this up right here, and then you would turn this top right here. So I'm spraying, when I'm spraying down, as you start to tilt it down, the product, you would actually start, if you were really low on product, you would start to have air right here. It's facing towards the back. You could end up sucking air and no product would come out. So you'd want it to be facing forward as you're spraying downward. So a lot of it is just downward. You're spraying the top of a piece of furniture, the top of the table. So more common to have it facing, downward. If you're spraying upside down, so if you're starting to turn it upside down like this, as you move it, you're going to have air right there, and you would possibly want it to be facing the opposite direction. You'd want it to face up. So you can see if it's facing forward, that gives me the advantage spraying downward. If I'm spraying upside down, it's facing upward, and if I'm low on product, it can end up sucking there. But it's pretty rare that I'm spraying upside down. It's most of the time it's downward, so I want it set up. So it's a simple little tip when it comes to setting up the spray gun properly and having it feeding the direction you want it to feed. So now in order to switch this, all I gotta do, I'm just gonna loosen up This right here, this is going to release. I can take the cap right here, switch the cap to the bottom, and the cap off the bottom. Screw my gravity feed onto the top. Hook up my air valve. Now I just went from siphon feed to a gravity feed cup, just like that. Opposite, just unhook your valve, take off your cup. I'm gonna switch the cap. Gonna screw on my siphon feed cup. Want to make sure direction I'm pointing. So I want it pointing forward. So forward is right there. I'm gonna tighten that up. Attach my cup. Reattach my valve. Ready to go. From gravity feed to siphon fed. When it comes to HVLP spraying, there's good sprayers, there's bad sprayers. There's sprayers that are going to give you a decent finish. There's sprayers that are going to give you an amazing, finish. I've used multiple guns, multiple sprayers, over the years, Graco, Titan, Apollo, I've used in others, and those are some of the major ones. I use now, this is an Apollo 7700 atomizer gun. This is the gun I use. Absolutely love this gun. It's the best gun I've used so far. And if you've never used an HVLP gun before, it's a little different than an airless sprayer. Airless sprayer is, just the gun itself. The only thing is you can change tips. We have some tips here. You throw on a different tip and you can adjust the pressure, at the sprayer, and that's just about it. An HVLP gun typically has an air valve and typically has a fluid valve. So you're going to control air by one, fluid by another. Now, when it comes to, cabinet refinishing and furniture flipping and refinishing on the atomizer gun, I back this, the air all the way out. So it's going to be full air coming through this gun. So it's backed all the way out. This is a pretty, critical tip right here to understand that if you're using an Apollo, I use a Precision-6, that it actually has a pressure control knob at the sprayer, so you control how much PSI is coming to your gun by that knob, and it has a digital readout. It tells you exactly what you're running. So that's where you actually control your airflow, not right here. You want this wide open. I typically have my airflow set for the products I'm using. It's 7.5 PSI. It's the same every time. So you're eliminating having to mess around with adjustments. I know the products I use 7.5. This is all the way backed out. The only thing I'm doing is I'm messing around with how much of my coating is actually coming out. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn it, there's a minus, I'm going to twist it, turn all the way in, and I'm going to begin setting, how much product is coming out. And I make this adjustment every single time I begin spraying. So I'm going to, get the thing running. I'm going to be in my booth. You can just spray it up against some cardboard or something, and I'll start to back this out and begin spraying till I have, just the right amount of paint, the right amount of atomization, that I want. I'm going to be backing this out and adding more and more product. The more product that comes out, the faster you can move. And I want to move pretty quick when I'm spraying with my HVLP sprayer. So that's some of the things with the guns. I know it's, some people, if you've never used an HVLP, this thing can look pretty intimidating, but it really is simple. All you're doing is just adjusting this. This is what adjusts how much material is coming out, just like switching tips on an airless sprayer. The other thing is needles, caps and nozzles, and that can get a little overwhelming. You get on our website or get on Apollo's website and you see all these different caps and you're like, oh my gosh, what cap? There's some recommendations and stuff, but what needle, what cap do I use? When it comes to furniture and cabinet refinishing, it's very simple. I use only one cap. I only use one needle and nozzle combination. I use a BHS cap, this gold cap, and this is really designed for spraying, high solid materials, latex paints, and polyurethanes. The needle and nozzle, there's a bunch of different sizes, just like there is a bunch of different sizes in airless sprayers, but I only use one needle size. I use a 1.3 needle and nozzle set with a BHS cap. It's very simple. That's all I ever use for doing furniture refinishing and painting. The thing you do, you have the ability to turn your fan width vertically or horizontally, kind of like airless spraying. You can just turn your gun to make your fan pattern vertical or horizontal. Here you just do it by turning your cap right there, and that's going to help you save product in overspray. You do have this dial right here. This is going to adjust, give you the ability to adjust your fan width. So I can go like from a wide fan width, I can turn it all the way down to just like basically drawing with it, just by turning this little dial right here. So you have multiple things, which is really beneficial when it comes to painting furniture. Furniture has all kinds of different sizes, widths, and stuff. The coatings are really expensive, so you don't want to have a lot of product waste a lot of times. So if you're just doing something really small, you can dial this thing down into just a little small fan pattern and spray with it. So it's not as overwhelming or as intimidating as it looks and sounds, but just getting it really dialed in, so you're saving product, because the products that we use, once they're catalyzed, are about $120 a gallon. You're using maybe just a little bit, a half a quart on a piece of furniture to a quart. So it's not like ridiculously expensive, but it can be expensive, and you don't want to have a lot of overspray and waste. You have to have kind of like a plan of attack, when you're spraying this piece of furniture. It's what should you spray, top, bottom, sides. We'll just say, for instance, a coffee table. I'm going to be doing the legs first. If there's anything like underneath, I'm going to be have it tilted up, do any spraying underneath. Then I'm going to hit all four legs. I'm going to hit the sides of it, and then I'm going to come and do the top of it. And when I do the top, I don't like the legs and stuff. I don't cross hatch anything. I'm going to spray it, vertically up and down on the leg. It's like what we say, going with the grain. The grain is vertical, so I'm going to spray it, up and down vertically. The side way on the coffee table, it's going with the grain that way. I'm going to spray it, horizontally. When it comes to the tabletop, I want this thing to be absolutely glassy smooth. I don't have to worry about runs at all, so I'm just going to load it on. I'm going to spray it, one direction, and I'm going to come back and spray it the opposite direction, and we call that cross-hatching it. And that's going to give you the ultimate glassy finish on that thing. And once again, I'm going to work quickly so that, any overspray coming down and hitting the sides of my legs is not going to, cause it to get rough from overspray, because the legs are already starting to dry. Something that will help you if you're spraying, with an airless sprayer or HVLP sprayer, if the temperature is really high, or there's like a lack of humidity, then it's going to dry like really quick, especially if you're not putting enough on. You really want to like load your product on, say a leg, and overlap 50%, get it on there so you're not skim coating it or fog coating it. Like if you're just fog coating it, getting a light coat on, it's going to flash dry really quick, and then your legs can get rough. But with 2K polys, one of the great things about them is a lot of them are just one coat and done. So you got your primer coat and your top coat, and you're done. You can reshoot everything, but there's times when, I'll just mask off the top, or one leg was this, I'll just mask off, just do that one leg over. But there's never anything set in stone, whether you're doing the top first or the legs first, etc. You really just gotta look at the whole project as a whole and come up with a plan of attack, before you do spray it. Runs can be an issue with an airless sprayer. With an HVLP sprayer, it's usually just the opposite. You got a higher transfer rate. You're putting out less product, but it's got a better transfer rate. And it's very rare that I get runs with an HVLP sprayer. The biggest thing I'll run into is not enough product coming out, and I have to go too slow. And sometimes a project, I'm sitting there spraying it, and it is just taking me, too long. I definitely want to make sure that I have, my material set where I got enough product coming out, enough product transferring on there that as I'm spraying and overlapping, it's all gelling together. So if you don't have enough product going on as you're moving and you're overlapping, you can get what we call like these dry edges and dry feathering edges, and you can get some roughness to your coating if you're not putting on enough coating. So it's just kind of like a fine line. You'll eventually dial it into when you're testing it out, you're seeing the product coming out, you're going to go, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. You start applying it. If you just feel like you're going too slow, open it up, send more material. If you feel like you're just getting too much and you got some runs, just back the material off. And if you're using 2K volleys, if you get a run or you get some rough edges, don't ever panic, don't worry, because it dries fast and you can sand it fast. It's one of the benefits to 2K polys is 45 minutes later, you can sand it and reshoot it again. All right, so I got a piece of furniture here now, and I'm going to go over kind of the steps that I do to refinish a piece of furniture. The first thing I'm going to do is inspect the furniture to make sure there's nothing loose that doesn't need to be tightened. Now we got some legs on this piece of furniture that are wobbling and stuff, so you're definitely going to want to have some tools to tighten things up. What we don't want to do is get our furniture all done and then have stuff all loose on it and begin having to tighten it and turning it upside down and sideways and stuff to tighten it later on, because you might scratch it. So we begin this process. We'll tighten everything down, make sure it's all super snug, get these legs tightened down properly so they're not wobbling anymore. Now once I get everything tightened up, I'm going to begin sanding this furniture. This is a piece of oak furniture, so I'm going to show you what it looks like to begin the sanding process. I'm going to begin sanding. I'm going to try to eliminate some of the grain profile. I'll be sanding with an 80 grit EcoStorm. EcoStorm sands a lot faster, cuts a lot faster than Film Tech. So I typically use EcoStorm on all my flat surfaces. Anything contoured, I'm going to be using a coarse, right here, EcoSilk. I'll be using a 5mm or a 10mm closed cell sponge. Now I've got it all sanded initially. I'm going to vacuum it because I don't want any dust getting mixed in with my aqua coat, and I don't want the dust down in the pores of the grain, so I want to vacuum everything out before I begin doing any type of grain filling. The next step I'm going to do, I'm going to begin using my aqua coat, and what I'm really concerned about mostly is just the top of this piece of furniture. This is where people are going to be setting drinks, setting stuff, they're going to be feeling it. Typically people are touching the legs and stuff. I'm not concerned about this. This is kind of weather beaten, water beaten and stuff, so I want to do a really good fill on that. So I'm going to skim a pretty heavy coat over the top of this. I'll skim a light coat. I'm not worried about getting down in the grain. I'm just going to skim a little bit on these flat surfaces, let that dry, and begin sanding. I use Bondo spreaders right here to spread it, or even a credit card, but what I like to do is make sure there's no rough edges. I'll just lightly sand these edges to make sure they're smooth, not rough. That way I'll get a nice, flat, tight skim coat of aqua coat on there. One of the big questions is people see the furniture afterwards, my after photos, and they'll say, I can still see grain. Well, I'm not trying to eliminate the profile of the wood when I'm doing one coat of aqua coat. I'm just trying to eliminate pinholes that would show up if I painted this a really light color. Probably going to do it a dark blue or something, so I don't have to do a whole lot of filling. Now if you wanted to get your rounded edges filled, if you really wanted to be particular and fill the grain in the rounded corners, you can use your finger works well. You can use try to use a tool like this to fill it if you're really particular about eliminating grain. Now if you're going to try to eliminate 100% of the grain, which I rarely do, you're going to want to do probably 3 coats, sand pretty heavily in between coats. So my aqua coat is now dry. I'm going to be using some flat film tack to be sanding. The top right here we'll be using some EcoSilk to be sanded our contoured edges. and then I'll skim another coat on the top. Now to give you some idea of what I'm after, I'm just after, you know, these little white specks. These are all the deep pores in the oak grain right here, and all those little white specks, if you were to paint it white, those would all be little dark shadows, little pinholes in here that would just gather dust, dirt, debris, water, if you sat a cup on here or something like that, liquids. So I'm filling in all those pinholes. I'll skim another coat, sand it to get flatter. I'm going to be sanding my sides. I typically only do one coat on the sides, usually 2 coats on the top if I'm just trying to eliminate pinholes. So I'm going to do one more coat of aqua coat on the top. Got a real heavy crack right there I'm trying to fill. And now it looks like it's filled pretty good. Alright, so now I'm getting ready to sand my top again, my final coat of aqua coat. I'm using my Ecodiamond sponge, just folding it to get down inside these cracks right here, where my sander can't get. You can just fold the Ecodiamond and get it down, deep down in there. So the next step, getting ready to, you know, prep this or paint this furniture now is to, depending on what product you're going to use. Now I use 2K polys, and they're what we call a self-seal. That means they'll prime over bare wood, because there's a lot of exposed bare wood on here, and so they act as a primer, act as a sealer. If you catalyze them, they block tannins and tannin bleeds. So I like to catalyze my products, makes them a lot more chemical resistant, water resistant, chip scratch resistant. For furniture, it's pretty important. Now, if you're not going to use a self-seal product, a 2K poly that's self-sealed, then you'll probably want to prime this. And so if I run into, you know, any type of, you know, issues, fisheye issues, I'll just spot prime it after my first coat. Spot prime it, lightly sand it, and the fisheye goes away. It's never not gone away using Ben's primer. So you can, you know, prime this whole thing. This is a small piece of furniture. I can just use a spray can and prime the whole entire thing. I wasn't going to, but I'm just going to show you what it would look like, just, you know, spraying using a spray can. So now I'm just, there's one crack in the piece of furniture right here in a seam in the wood. The aqua coat didn't fill that, so I'm just using Bondo glazing putty. So anytime I have any small nicks and dings, Bondo glazing putty is, you know, the perfect product, you know, to sand or to hide small nicks and dings. There's actually a little ding right there. You can eliminate that ding. Just all depends on, you know, the furniture itself, the color. The darker the color, the more all this stuff would be hidden. So we're gonna let that Bondo glazing putty dry, and then I'll use a 2-edge knife, 2-edge 5-in-1 tool to apply it with. It's a versatile tool, it has a knife on it too, so we always typically keep a 2-edge 5-in-1 or a 2-edge putty knife on me at all times. So now I'm working on getting ready to spray my furniture. I'm going to be using a 2K poly right here, and this is a 1 or 2K poly. You can, you know, use it straight out of the can, or you can catalyze it to add, you know, more durability to the product. Now this is an absolute vital part of, you know, getting ready to spray. Using any type of sprayer is you always want to strain your product. Now I'm going to be using my Apollo Precision-6 Pro to be spraying with, my atomizer 7700 gun. This is the cup. You can either use gravity fed or siphon feed. I'm using a siphon feed here. All right, one of the final things I like to do when I finish up a piece of furniture, if there's any knobs I can replace or new knobs I can put on, I like to do that just to kind of give it a final polished look to it. This piece of furniture right here started out, it was $5 at a secondhand store. We're all done with it. I'm gonna do one last thing. I'm gonna add a knob. This is gonna give kind of that final cool looking, added touch to it. It's kind of like a antique brass looking knob. All I'm going to do is just put it right in the middle here. I'm just going to measure my drawer. One thing I do recommend, like when you're measuring to put on your knobs, you should measure and then remeasure so you don't make a mistake. You drill a hole in the wrong place, then it's going to be difficult to fix. So I don't want to screw my knob on and scratch it. Once I get it snug, I'm just going to take my screwdriver back end and tighten it from the back side. This furniture is all done, moved around, we're moving in and out here, videotaping stuff. Got a little scratch right there. I typically keep artist brushes for doing all my touch-ups. See, just a couple little spots. You want something really soft. I don't want to throw a big old brush stroke on there or anything. Just use a tiny little artist brush. I'll just take some, dab it on there, and touch. Got a few little touch-ups there coming up the side, right there. It's always good to have, a really good set of artist brushes for doing touch-ups. I can get squeezed down inside here sometimes, like in cracks and crevices. If the sprayer didn't get deep down in there, you can use this. So have a good set of artist brushes for doing touch-ups. It's always, really fun. One thing you don't want to forget to do is get photos, before and after photos. It's like amazing how many times I forget to get a before photo, and it's so cool to be able to go, back at the end and see, see what it looked like before. There's a little touch up there on the bottom of that foot where I hit the door coming through the door there. So there we go. And this is, once again, I'm using a water-based 2K poly. And I typically catalyze my 2K poly when I do furniture. So this is what a 2K poly looks like. With a piece of furniture like this, I wasn't concerned about it. But if you want, the piece of furniture to be extra durable, extra water resistant, chemical resistant, then catalyzing it is a good option. There you go, another furniture flip. All right, today I'm here in Vista, California with the owner of Apollo Sprayers, John Darroch. So, John, I want to talk a little bit about, we've got the Apollo Atomizer 7700 gun, and I want to talk about cleaning this gun because it is important to maintain it. It is important to clean it, right. And maybe it might be important to lube it. So, can you give me kind of like the rundown on how you would go about cleaning this gun? Say, for instance, I use a lot of 2K polys, and they're water-based products. What would I clean with, and what would I not clean with that might cause some problems? So
good question, Chris. So there's a lot of stainless steel in the atomizer gun, which really helps to clean, to keep the gun in good order, so it's not going to grab onto the coatings and things like that. So having good materials in the gun helps a lot. But with the water-based materials, really the best thing to clean it up with is, believe it or not, just some dishwashing soap and some good old-fashioned warm water. And I love to just run it through with some warm water, some dishwashing soap. That usually grabs the material and pulls it out of the passageways. And then there's certain components in that you want to take apart on the gun to make sure that you're cleaning them properly. But using things like lacquer thinner with waterborne finishes is going to be a big no-no. A lot of people tend to try to do that, but if you've ever tried to do that, lacquer thinner will not only make the water-based materials gum up in many ways and not actually break them down and clean them, but lacquer thinner leaves an oily residue in the spray gun as well. So if you go back and you spray a water-based material after you've cleaned your gun with a lacquer thinner, you're going to end up pulling that oily residue out of the gun with your material, and it's going to end up causing all kinds of problems with contamination on your surface, as we commonly call fisheye. Right. So to avoid that, what I like to do is when I'm done cleaning up, and for me, because I spray a lot of different kinds of paints, I spray waterborne, solvent-bornes all day long, so I have to make sure that my gun is completely compatible with both types of finishes.
Right.
And so the best thing to do, if you want to make sure that your gun is compatible with the most types of finishes on the market, is to use acetone. So I do a general cleanup with if it's a solvent-borne, I will use lacquer thinner. Or if it's waterborne, as we were talking about, then I'll use just the warm water and some dishwashing soap. Then I'll flush out afterwards with a little bit of acetone. And what the acetone will do is pull out any oil that's in there that's left over from the lacquer thinner if I use that to clean. Or and vice versa, it'll pull the water out of the gun too, so that it's not leaving it in the gun to evaporate and leave any water deposits or anything like that inside the gun. So keeping the gun clean and using it with acetone is key to keeping it in good shape.
All right, John, thank you very much for giving us some tips and tricks on how to clean the 7700 atomizer gun. So if you got any questions or comments for John or I, just leave it down in the comment section below. We'll try to get to that section, answer those questions and comments. Don't forget, if you liked the video, give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate it very much. All right, today we're going to be giving you a pro tip on cleaning the atomizer 7700 gun. I got John here today, and John, you're the expert on this gun, so
I hope so.
we actually were talking about cleaning it, and this is something I know now because I've never done this before. And you're going to talk about actually removing this, the importance of removing it when you're actually doing the cleaning, and how much easier it makes the cleaning of the gun. So can you give us a little pointer and a little pro tip on cleaning this gun?
Absolutely. So when you're using the gravity feed cup on the atomizer gun, we have the cap on the bottom here, which is normally where you'd attach your bottom cup or your pressure pot. But what happens is, as you're painting, you'll end up getting a little reservoir of paint that will build up into this little fitting right here. And if you're not careful and you don't clean it after you're done, you can actually have the paint stay in there, and then it even can be sucked up and pulled out into your next color. And so maybe now you're mixing colors and things like that. The other thing that can happen is that paint can just dry in there if you never clean it or take the cap off. And then if you come to use the bottom cup one day and you have it solid with paint, that's not going to be a good thing either. So actually, not only good to remove it to clean it, but it actually helps by cleaning the gun better too. So when I clean the spray gun, I'll always just take the cup off first and clean the cup out. So we'll go ahead and take the cup off the gun here. And that basically just leaves me with the gun body to clean. So when I take the rest of the gun apart and I pull my needle and my nozzle out, this is especially useful when you're spraying latex water-based products, because most of us clean up in the sink when we're done, and so this is really handy for making sure you're cleaning up the gun real well. So I'm going to take all of the front part of the gun apart, which now leaves me with just your material passages in the gun, right? So when I take off the cap, I'm not only going to notice that you'll have paint that'll fall out of here, because the paint will be stuck in here because of gravity, right? So you want to clean the bottom of the cap too, because that can be a source of contamination. But now I have a straight shot through the whole gun and into the front of the gun too. So I can take my cleaning brush and I can put my cleaning brush in here while I hold it underneath the sink. And I've got hot water running through here and cleaning it all out. So I can get into all the parts inside the gun really well to make sure I'm cleaning it and getting that paint particularly out of this bottom portion here.
So it seems like you'll be able to clean it a lot faster that way too.
A lot faster, yeah, because your paint will flush out of here much quicker because you've got the water coming through.
Yeah, that's a great little tip, and I can't wait to get home and see what's down inside that thing in mine, and
what's lurking dark in the depths.
So, and it's probably the same. I mean, because you had a gravity feed cup, if you had a siphon cup, and you got the cap on top there, it's kind of maybe the paint's going to still fall down here. You might not get buildup inside there, but it's still going to make the cleanup a lot faster.
Exactly. So it doesn't have a negative effect if you don't take the top cap off when you're cleaning the gun, although you will still get some paint up in there, so there is still a risk of contamination. When you've got the bottom cup, or if you're cleaning up after using your pressure pot, taking the cap off again is just an easier way to get your water to flush down through the spray gun and have it just completely flush out the gun, rather than just having it come in from one direction. So typically, if I didn't have this cap, I'd be inverting the gun and flushing it down this way. So it just makes it a lot easier to do that.
So there you have a little pro tip, cleaning the gun. If you got any tips or tricks yourself about cleaning your HVLP gun, your atomizer gun, leave it down in the comment section below. If you got any questions for us, just go ahead and ask them below and we'll try to answer them as soon as we can. We'll see you next time right here on Paint Life TV. Out. Today I'm here with John Darroch, Vista, California, Apollo Sprayers. Right behind me. They're the manufacturers of the Atomizer 7700 gun. I know cleaning is important, to maintaining your equipment and possibly even lubrication. So will you give us some tips and tricks on how to lubricate, if necessary, the Apollo 7700 Atomizer gun? Kind of tongue twister, there. So,
yeah, it is a little bit, huh?
Yeah. So, John, he's going to give us some tips and tricks right now on lubing this gun. Does anything on this gun need to be lubed? And, can I like put some Vaseline on the end of the gun, to lube the end of the gun? Can you kind of give me just the lowdown on how to go about lubing this thing if it needs to be lubed?
So again, any petroleum product around a spray gun, if you're using a water-based material, is going to be a no-no. You don't want to have any kind of oil product in your gun if you're spraying water-based, period. So that means petroleum jelly, that's got petroleum in it, and a Vaseline, anything, your 3-in-1 oils, any of that kind of stuff. We do recommend that you do lube some of the parts on the spray gun, and we can show you that here in a second, but the type of oil that we use is a special oil that we put in with our system. It's not a regular 3-in-1 oil like you might think, or an automotive oil, because it has no petroleum in it. So it's a special oil that we've developed with no petroleum distillates and no silicones in it. And that's really important for making sure that you don't have any of that contamination in your finish, which ultimately offers those nice looking fish eyes looking back at you, and everybody goes, no!
Like I own multiple Apollo 7700 guns. Inside the gun, you open up the kit, there's like a little clear bottle with a white cap on it. So that's the gun lube, and that's a special lube.
It's a special lube.
Okay.
Yep. So we deliberately put that little bottle in there with every one of our spray guns so that our customers have the proper lube for the spray gun. And then that's also available at Paint Life Supply too if you want to buy a little 2-ounce bottle of it to replenish after that runs out.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you definitely lube it with the right product. So what would I lube? Because I know you've got a moving needle in here. You've got a seat inside here, a valve that you can't access. What would you lube on this gun to keep it running properly?
So there's really not a whole lot you do need to lube. Most of it is the threaded parts, right? The gland seal here, which is your needle packing, is made from Teflon. And Teflon, as many people may know, is a self-lubricating plastic. So there's very little time that you'd ever really need to put any lubrication on the gland seal itself. So typically what I'm lubing is the parts that I'm using back and forth and screwing back and forth. So my material control knob on the back of the gun. Sometimes especially if I'm using water base, it'll tend to dry out the aluminum and make it kind of squeak when you use it. So if I put a little bit of lube on that, it'll make the threads work nicely and smoothly so that they don't squeak. So that's one of the places I'll use, is on the back here. And then on the front of the gun too. So where we all undo our rings to clean out the front of our gun, we have these threads on the front here. And so those also need to be lubricated every now and again, just so that when you assemble the ring back on there, it moves nice and freely, and you don't have any. It's also very important to clean that area as well, so that you don't have any material drying in there to lock on that ring. But adding some lube to it afterwards will also help to stop that from gluing itself together.
So one of the things that, when I pull the gun apart, I got the needle, when I put it back together, I would typically add some of that lube, stick it back in there, because I thought I was adding some lubricant to that Teflon seal in there.
And you are.
So is that good or bad to do?
It probably isn't going to make any difference, honestly, Chris. I mean, it's certainly not going to hurt because of the oil that we're using, but really not necessary. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I actually put lube on that portion of the needle. I used to recommend it, and some of our older guns, we used to use a Delrin material, which is not a self-lubricating plastic, and so it was necessary to have that. But with the Teflon, you really don't need to have it. That's why I recommend really just those two places. And then if you are using the OS control on the gun, then obviously you want to put a little bit of lube on the threads on this too. But that's really those parts that are just friction parts is really all you need to lube.
All right, John, so we've got some tips. You gave us some tips and tricks on how and whether you need to lube the 7700 atomizer gun. Really appreciate it. Now, if anybody has any questions or comments, if they leave them right here, you can answer them?
Yeah, we can answer them. You can answer them.
Yeah.
We can all answer them.
Yeah, so just...
We're here for you guys.
Exactly. So just leave it right down in the comment section below. Your questions, your comments. And if you want, give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the video. Out. So today we're going to be talking about the 7700 atomizer gun. I got John here with me, and if you ever feel like air maybe touching your fingers or leaking out of the gun, this is something that you may run into. Now, if you don't clean your gun good enough, you can get overspray built up on the valve stem, and there's a little gasket, inside there, a seat that will pop out, and all of a sudden you'll be spraying, you'll feel air like hitting your hand. Now, Apollo has created a simple little tool to help resolve that problem. So John, can you, if you run into this issue and you feel air touching your fingers, leaking out of the gun, can you explain to us what is going on, how to resolve it? It's really simple of how to fix this problem.
It's a lot simpler now that we have that tool. For
yeah,
sure.
And so you kind of created this real amazing tool. Before you had to use like a #2 pencil or something to poke this little gasket in there. So This is incredible that you've created this tool. It's available. How does it work, and show us what the problem is?
Okay, so as you said, Chris, the problem is I'm pulling the trigger, and when I pull the trigger, I'm feeling air, usually on the front of my fingers. And what's happening is there's a seal inside the back of the gun right here, and this valve is going back and forth as you pull and release the trigger. But over time, you can get a buildup of overspray on the front part of the valve only. And what happens is when that gets big enough, it'll actually grab the seal and pull it into the spray gun. So when I disassemble the spray gun, when I pull the valve out, the whole valve will have that part, the seal, stuck to it just like that.
So it's this seal right here that we're talking about.
This is the valve stem bushing, and it's usually the front part of this valve stem that's sticking out into the environment that you're spraying in. And so with just a little bit of overspray floating around, it sticks to this part here, and eventually it just pulls this part into the gun. So the easy fix is to slide the part off. Usually that's intact. You don't need to do anything to it. And then before you put it back together, make sure you clean the front part of the valve. So I usually take some acetone on a rag or something and just wipe it off so it's nice and smooth and nice and clean. Then the fun part used to be putting this little guy back into the gun, because you basically have to deal with dropping it through the inside of the gun and try to get it in. So I used to sit there with the needle like this, and I'd be sitting there trying to drop it in, and then I'd take the air valve and try to push it around, and that was, it was really fiddly. And so we came up with this new tool, and all you do is just insert the bushing onto the end of the tool like this, and it's designed so that it sits right into the gun. The diameter of the tool itself is designed perfectly for the gun. Right. The inside diameter of the gun. So when you push this in, it's going to shove that bushing right into the slot, into the seat where it sits. So all I do is just push on it, twist it a couple of times, pull my tool back out, and the valve bushing is already reinserted.
So do I need to clean that bushing or lubricate that bushing?
Not the bushing itself.
Okay.
What I usually do is I obviously want to clean all the overspray off the valve before you put that back on there. And then I do sometimes put a little bit of lubrication on the front. So that would be sometimes another spot to put a little bit of lube on if you're finding that you're getting a lot of overspray buildup on there. You don't want to use regular oils or anything like that, even on the outside of the gun, because anything on your gun has risk of contamination, and oils have petroleum in it, and petroleum with water-based particularly is a big problem. So always use acetone. That's why I said acetone. And I clean off the valve stem with the acetone, and then just a little bit of lubrication on there. It'll allow the valve then to naturally slide nice and freely through the bushing itself.
Yeah, I gotta say, that's one of the major differences between Apollo and other spray companies. When you guys have an issue and customers have complaints, you guys listen, you resolve the problems, you try to make it simple, you try to make it easy, and I gotta say, that's awesome. Really appreciate that. So there you have it, how to resolve air leaking out of your gun. Questions, comments below. If this has helped you in any way, don't forget to give me a thumbs up or John a thumbs up.
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up would actually be cool. We'll see you right here next time time on Paint Life TV. Out. All right, today I'm here with John. We're going to be talking about the Atomizer 7700 gun and kind of, something that happened to me that was a problem, and we're going to talk about how to fix that problem if you ever run into the same thing. Now we have inside, the front of this gun, kind of a nylon gasket or something. We call it a fan distributor plate.
Air distributor plate.
An air distributor plate. Now, I put everything back together. I went to start spraying, and I was just spraying a circular pattern.
That's it.
And I'm like, what the heck? And I started adjusting my fan control knob or ring right here, and it didn't do anything. And so I knew something was not together right. I eventually, went, broke out the manual, read the manual, figured it out, what was going on. Every time I would clean the gun, put it back together, I kind of struggled with this in the beginning. Which way does this plate go in? Right. And you came up with something very simple that, worked for me and kind of just resonated with me, 12 and 6. So can you show us, if you run into that issue, how to resolve it?
Yeah, it's a real common problem for sure when you're reassembling the gun, especially for those people that aren't familiar with it and just purchase it. So let's run through it. So the part we're talking about is actually buried underneath all of the air distributors. So we need to remove the nozzle and pull that whole assembly off. So we got the nozzle, the air distributor, and here's where we have the fan control ring and the air distributor plate. So these two pieces here are critical for your fan pattern control, right? The way they are now, they will give you full adjustment. What typically happens though, as you can see, the slots in here, I'm holding it up, are at 12 and 6 o'clock. And if I flip it around so hopefully you can see that in the video, you can see that you can see through the slots in the back of the fan control. That's important because when I flip it around and I put it in backwards, you can see that when I put it in backwards, that the disc or the air distributor plate is actually blocking the air from coming through these slots in the back of the fan control ring. And that's going to block off all of your air supply going to the ears of the air cap, which basically only gives you a round pattern.
Right.
So that's very common. The easiest way to tell, if you put it back together and you have the fan control ring where your slots are at 12 and 6 o'clock, but then when you put the air distributor on it, your slots are now at 3 and 9 o'clock.
Right.
Right? And so that's blocking the holes off. So what we want when we put this all back together is to have all of the slots at 12 and 6 o'clock. So when I hold that up, again, we have all the air that's able to go from the back through into the front of the gun so that it's feeding the air evenly to the ears and to the center hole in the air cap.
And that small circular hole, that's going to line up with the pin.
With the pin on the back here, yeah. So all of this is aligned with the pin. And the only thing the pin does is just stops this whole assembly from rotating in the spray gun so that when I turn the ring, I'm not going to rotate the whole assembly. Right. I'm only going to just rotate the ring because it's that ring, and I don't know again if this will come out in the video, but it's that ring. When I rotate it, it closes off the holes, and that's how it distributes the air to the ears, or basically controls the fan pattern width all the way down to a round pattern. So by shutting the air off to the ears of the air cap, we force the air all the way through the center hole, and that just gives you a round pattern.
And then this pin that you had there, that's going to line up with the hole in the face of the gun.
So this whole assembly usually comes off in one piece, and I usually put it back together. In fact, I'll just drop the nozzle in here as well, and it makes it real easy because then you can just drop this whole assembly onto the front of the gun and then just kind of wiggle it until you feel it drop into the hole, and now you have it all lined up, and I can just tighten down my nozzle.
So you're going to tighten down your nozzle now.
Finger tight, and then just a little bit on the wrench, not too much. And now when you put the gun back and you go back to spray, you'll have your full fan width control and be able to have all the different widths of fan pattern, including your round pattern.
Yep. So there you have it. If you've ever run into that problem like I have, and now you understand, how to resolve it, you understand how to install the distributor plate.
Air distributor
plate, 12 and 6 is an easy way for me to remember to install it correctly every single time so I don't have to tear it apart and reinstall it. If you got any questions or comments about this video, just leave it down in the comment section below. We'll try to answer them as soon as we can, and we'll see you next time right here on Paint Life TV. All right, today we're going to be doing some troubleshooting on the Apollo 7700 atomizer gun, John. And, this has actually happened to me before. And, you have your fan control ring right here. Is that, did I call it what it's supposed to be
That
called?
is correct.
And so this is what controls your fan, that widens the fan or narrows it. And this usually, it should actually, if it's functioning right, it should be like kind of like not super tight, but it should be.
You want a little resistance on it.
Little resistance, and it'll like, you know, move back and forth smooth. You can see there's no resistance. It kind of wobbles a little bit. That's a problem. Something's not, you know, put together right. And once again, it's happened to me before. Could you show our viewers what's actually going on here? It's something very simple.
Yes.
And you can show us how to correct that problem.
Very simple. Most of the issues that happen with the 7700 gun are usually a result of putting one of the parts in backwards. This is no different. So this fan control ring here, the tension on the ring is actually governed by a gasket that sits right behind the nozzle here. So if I remove the nozzle, and inside the air distributor is this gasket here. And this is a very common problem that we get. This gasket has been put in upside down. And the reason I can tell that is because the ring was so loose, right? So if I take my gun tool here and I use the flat edge, and you probably can't see this in the video, but on the gasket, there's actually a thin side of the gasket.
To a point?
Comes to a point, right? And then there's like a flat side, which is actually squared off, right? So there's two parts in our gun that are like this and very similar, and both parts go into this gun the same way. So in this case, we had the gasket in upside down, which meant that the thin side was facing up and the larger side was down inside the distributor. And we actually want it the opposite way. So when I put this gasket back in, I'm going to put the thin side in first. So I like to think of thin to win.
Thin to win.
Or
thin side down.
or the point is kind of an arrow pointing into the gun.
Right.
So that's another way to remember. And then all you want to do is just kind of take your fingers and just push it down flush. Right.
So it should be flush with this metal point right there. Okay.
With the face of the air distributor.
So you don't want to press it in with any tools down in there deep.
Nope, just with your fingers, just so that it's flush, right?
Right.
Because what's going to happen is when I put the nozzle back in and the nozzle pulls this all together, it's actually going to pull that gasket down into the air distributor and seat it properly so that it puts the right tension on this. So you remember when before we took the gun apart, it was really sloppy loose, right? So now that we flip that back and reset it, I can put the gun back together again. And if you're putting it together like this, where you're putting the nozzle in and you still have the needle in the gun, then always make sure you pull the needle back, because you don't want to put the nozzle in with any resistance from the needle. It'll damage the needle. And then once I've got it in there, we only need to just snug the nozzle up. We don't need to crank on it. So just finger tight and then snug it. And then now you can see there's a much difference in the way the fan control ring feels. So we've got the right amount of tension on it now.
So now I got that smooth resistance, just like it felt, you know, when I originally bought the gun. Now, you know, I used to take this tool and I would take this and I would tighten it up, and I would tighten it up till all of a sudden I kind of felt it like just stop, and it felt like it was like metal to metal, so it's got pretty tight. What you're saying is that's too tight, or that's not right.
It's not necessary. The way we machine the nozzle and the inside of the nozzle tube, the back of the nozzle has a little chamfer on it, and that chamfer matches the chamfer inside the nozzle tube. And because they're machined to such precision, they fit together perfectly. You don't need to. I can actually put this nozzle in the gun, finger tight, and it will not leak.
Right.
So you don't need to tighten it up at all.
So I think, you know, when I was talking to you about this, and one thing I just did right there, I didn't pull the trigger back. So you want to actually pull the trigger back.
Always pull the trigger back, or I just remove the needle usually from the gun.
Yeah, removing the needle is actually the best and safest way to do it. What happens, say, if somebody was removing the gasket, or they dropped the gasket in the grass and it disappeared? Can you purchase new gaskets and replace them?
Through Paint Life Supply.
Okay. So they are replaceable. So
every
if you damage it, every gasket in the gun.
Every gasket, every part in our gun is replaceable.
Okay.
There's really not anything that can be damaged that much that we can't replace it or repair it.
So there you go, troubleshooting the fan control ring. It's all functioning properly and working out on the Atomizer 7700 gun. Thank you, John. If you guys got any questions or comments about this or the gun, leave it down in the comment section below. We would appreciate it. Thank you very much for being right here on Paint Life TV. Out. All right, now we're gonna get started on our next piece of furniture that I'm going to be refinishing with Renner 851. The customer picked out the color Coral Glow. This is 851 self-seal. We're gonna be spraying it over this oak furniture right here. I do got right here some brass that's installed on here. I tried to take the tabletop off to see if I can get this brass piece out of here. Tabletop was screwed on, but also glued on, so it would not come off. So I'm just going to mask it. I'm going to be using frog tape. So frog tape's going to keep anything from bleeding. Just masking it really tight. Once again, this is going to go pretty fast. We begin sanding. I'll begin sanding with probably like 220 film tech on the flats, and then I'll be using 1/2 inch Eka silk right here on the legs right here and some of the rounded edges, contoured edges. I'm going to be spraying the 648. I'm going to be shooting on a coat of the primer. That's a grain filling primer. We're going to see how well it fills the grain on this, versus just shooting our first top coat and seeing how that goes. So 648 grain filling primer, water-based coating from Renner is going to be our primer. So I got my first coat of grain filling primer all sprayed on. It's done an excellent job filling in the grain. I'm going to lightly sand this, and then I'm going to spray one more coat on. I'm going to catalyze my next coat because I got a lot of tan and bleed coming through. The color we're going to be spraying on here is going to be a pretty light color. I don't want that tannin to be bleeding through. This primer doesn't block tannins unless you catalyze it. So this is a 1 or 2K product, so it can be used straight out of the can, or you can actually catalyze it. That's the 2K part of it. So I'm going to be catalyzing this. If I let it set overnight and then come back and top coat it, it will block all the tannins that started showing up through our first coat of this primer. So catalyzing, I'm going to show you, here's the catalyst right here. This is a product from Renner. It is 404, it's their catalyzer. Once you catalyze it, you have a 4-hour pot life, so you want to make sure that you clean up all your equipment, prior to that 4 hours expiring, or you're going to damage or ruin your equipment, be it an airless sprayer or HVLP sprayer. Another thing, when I catalyze, when I take and introduce my catalyst into my product, I don't want to just take the catalyst and just dump it in there and start stirring it up, because you're going to do what we call shock it. You'll shock your product, and then it's going to start to harden and get kind of like cottage cheesy or yogurty if you introduce it too fast. You want to just slowly introduce it and then begin stirring it up while you're introducing it. So I got 643 or 648. 643 is another primer, from Renner that I have sitting over here. It's not a grain filling primer, but that's a 1 or 2K product too, that if you catalyze it, it will block tannins and dye migration. So I just measured out a quart, so I put a quart in here. The ratio for the catalyst is 10 ounces to 12 ounces per gallon. So if I measured out a quart here, that's 1/4 of a gallon. So I would just take the 12 ounces, divide that by 4, which is 3. I would introduce 3 ounces if I went to the top end. If I was at the lower end, I'd be about 2.5 ounces. So somewhere between 2.5 ounces to 3 ounces is what you want to dump in here. I've got a measuring cup that tells me exactly where 2 ounces is on here, 2.5 ounces. So I'll just pour in 2.5 ounces. Like I got my quart right here, measured out of my product, mixed in there, 648. I'm just going to take my catalyst. I typically always put on gloves. I don't like handling this stuff unless I got gloves on. Just use disposable gloves. That way I can take them off, throw them away. The top pops out, so it's easy to pour. I'm just going to measure out 2.5 ounces. You can see it right through there. 2.5. Halfway between 2 and 3. Now, this portion, or this step right here, I can't stress enough, this is extremely important. I don't want to just dump this in there and then start stirring, or have to go look for a stir stick and then stir it, because you're going to shock it, basically ruin your product. So I'm going to I'll begin just stirring like this, and I'm going to begin slowly introducing it in. And so this process, you need to stir it for 2 minutes, so approximately 2 minutes. So I don't want to dump it all in there, just stir it for 30 seconds, because you won't get it 100% dispersed and all your product won't be catalyzed. I typically have a piece of paper, something that I can mark my time. So I'm going to look at the time, 5 to 11, so it's approximately 11 o'clock, 5 minutes, so we're going to say it's 10:55. So I'm going to mark 10:55, and then 4 hours from that, 2:55, So 255 would be, I better have my equipment cleaned up by that time because everything's gonna start hardening up. It does happen pretty fast. I'm gonna minus 15 minutes from that. That's gonna give me a little bit of leeway. So 255, 245, 240, 240. I'm gonna set an alarm on my phone at 240 to go off at 240. That's gonna warn me I need to be done doing whatever I'm doing and clean up my equipment. Ready to go now, it's ready to spray. I can begin spraying my 648 primer now. Now I'm just gonna lightly sand, in between coats. All I really need to do is sand, the top here and the top surface here. I'm gonna hit it. You can actually hit, the sides too if you want, but it's really just very, very quickly. You're not trying to over sand. If you over sand, you're gonna cut through your top coat, maybe even cut through your primer. So it's just a real quick, light scuff. All right, the final step to our piece of furniture here is I masked off with green frog tape this brass strip right here. We're gonna pull off our frog tape and hopefully I don't have any bleed through, any cleaning to do. If you see any places where the paint might have bridged from your substrate, your piece of furniture to the tape, you just wanna trim that. Otherwise, it could actually peel it off your furniture and then you'd have a touch up to do. But I can see my frog tape right here starts right there. Grab a hold of that and then begin peeling this off. So I'm working on a piece of furniture here that's got moving parts on it, quite a challenge here. Had glass in it that I was trying to take the glass out and it was in so tight I thought I was gonna actually break the glass, but I eventually got it out. When I start to paint it and get product in here, it's gonna even make it tighter. So I'm using a Dremel tool to sand down the edges right here to make it a looser fit. I couldn't even actually, once I got the glass out, I couldn't even get it back in. Now I worked on this one, the glass slides in and out of it. The other challenge is this thing rotates. Not sure how I'm gonna work with that, but Dremel tool with little sanding discs on them. I'll show you what I'm doing. Gotta be really careful with my discs that I don't push too hard. The little drums burn out really fast. Smoked glass right here that goes inside. Now that one sits in there super nice. This one was super tight. Still a little bit tight. This one here. That one's still a ways from setting down in there. So now I've got to my table. I've got 3 coats on. I did my first coat, did a coat of aqua coat, then sprayed 2 more coats, cleaned my glass. Now I'm going to begin installing my glass, seeing if it fits in. Hopefully it's going to set right in, not be too tight. See, it's almost fitting in there. See if I can, just a little bit tight. Maybe this might not be an issue. So I took some glass cleaner, cleaned the glass. I used a small blade to help clean. Oh, that one just set right in. So I just, once again, glass cleaner is kind of like ammonia-based glass cleaner. There's some stuff on there. I scraped it off with the blade. The smoke glass is looking really cool. Final piece of glass right here. Should set right in. Sets right in. So this piece right here, I didn't know if the paint was going to cause it to stick, but rotates in. There you go. Rotates back out. Just like it's supposed to. Absolutely love it. Working on this bamboo vase that this customer wanted to match the other furniture. It had some big cracks that I bondoed. I've got some really small hairline cracks. I'm gonna try to just fill with some big stretch here. And I just want to fill the cracks, so I'm just gonna sponge, use a really wet finger, and basically sponge caulk it, just leave. All I want is my big stretch to be down in the crack. I'll remove everything else. The big stretch, if this thing has any expansion and contraction, the big stretch will flex with it. Then I'm gonna respray it again, be all done. All right, John, we got the grand tour of your factory here in Vista, California, and I really appreciate it. So,
my pleasure, thanks.
It was really cool because I actually learned a whole bunch from this trip. I thought I was just gonna come here, hey, shoot some filming, some stuff being made, and shoot a few cool videos, but I'm not an expert at HVLP spraying. It's new to me. I mean, I started off spraying with the airless sprayers for 20 years. I met you, started spraying, with HVLPs. I went back to airless sprayers. I've come back to HVLP sprayers again, and I've come here and you've taught me a whole lot. So I gotta say thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back and implement some of the stuff that I've learned from you, and my audience is here and they may not know a whole lot about Apollo sprayers. And can you just give me just a little history of your company? You are a family-owned and operated company. Your son's been working with us today here shooting video and stuff. We've got to see some employees that have worked here 23 years. So can you just give us a little bit of background? Because I think it's important, it's important for me that we support local family-owned and operated companies. So.
Yeah. Apollo was originally founded in 1966 in England. And it was actually one of my father's friends that started the company. And there still isn't Apollo sprayers in the UK right now, which is a separate business from ours. But in the late 70s, we brought the product over to the U.S. and started selling it to woodworkers and contractors and things like that. And we basically pioneered HVLP in this country. There's been other brands that have come and gone since then, but we're actually the oldest original manufacturer that still focuses just on HVLP turbine systems. My father has been doing it since, like I said, the late 70s. I became introduced into the company. I remember as a little kid going to our little 500 square foot factory at the time. And my dad would bring in kits from England at that time, and we'd assemble them in the evening, and then he'd load them into the car, and the next day he'd go off and do some demos and sell them all, and then come back and we'd do the same thing. And that's kind of how we started the business, you know. And things have grown obviously a lot since those early days. But I think the biggest thing is that I've grown up in this business, right? My dad's owned it, started it since I was around 13 years old, and kind of like the same with what my son's been able to do now too. So you kind of might say that turbine systems are in our blood,
right?
And because it's our passion, it's something that we do, and we try to do the very best, right? Whenever I do anything in my life, period, I don't like to do something half-ass. I just like to go after it. If I'm really going to do something, I try to put 110% into it.
Right.
And that's what we do here at Apollo. Everything that we do is built around the contractor.
Right.
We listen to our customers. That's how we're able to improve our product.
Right.
You know, I can't take the credit for everything that we have and what we've done today. Because a lot of it has come from our customers and just listening to our customers and understanding what their pains are and how we can help them to have a better piece of equipment that's easier to use, that performs better and so forth. And
Right.
that's really at the heart of what Apollo is all about.
Right. I would highly recommend, anybody doing cabinets, anybody doing furniture, anybody doing wrought iron fences, that they would use HVLP sprayers. And I have my reasons why I chose to go back to them and use them, but can you just talk to my audience? I mean, you've been in this business for almost your entire life, and so what's the benefit of an HVLP sprayer over an airless sprayer?
The first thing that Apollo teaches our customers is that there's really not one tool for everything. So we're not out there telling you that the HVLP turbine system is the be-all end-all for every painting situation that you'll ever be in, because that's absolutely not true. If I wanted to spray the exterior of a house or there's no way I'm going to do that with an HVLP turbine. Could I? Sure. I mean, I could. But it would take me 10 times longer, and it just wouldn't be as efficient efficient in the way of time. Really, I think it's applying the right type of equipment to the right job. And like you said, certain types of finishing, refinishing, particularly like on-site work and things like that, where you're doing something in somebody's home and you really want to be able to control the overspray and know exactly where that's going. Besides the fact that you're wasting that paint if it sticks to the hardy board and all the other you're masking, but it's more about the environment and everything, and the reduction of your overall paint and the use or the experience really when you're using it, right? The benefits of the HVLP are the portability, the low overspray, and so which what most people know.
Right.
And so that's why. So you want to keep your projects to things that are realistic. The paints that you can spray out. There's some paints that are just not designed to spray through a turbine system. They need to have an airless system to spray them. And so knowing your paints and knowing really how the tools work properly, both an airless and an HVLP, that way you can then, as a painter, you can position that in your business right. And that way when you go into a job, you have both tools and the right tool for that particular job.
Yeah, I think, you touched on, a big part of it, the right tool for the job. And I think, one of the reasons why, I transferred back to, HVLP spraying was I kind of like migrated to spraying, a lot of 2K poly, products, and, with an airless sprayer, I started getting runs all the time because I like to spray, the product, the substrate hanging, like doors. I can spray all 4 edges, both sides, all in one shot. It saves a lot of time, but I started getting a lot of runs. And, so then, I started experimenting with HVLP spraying, recently with furniture and cabinets and stuff. And, after 3 months, I haven't had a run, since then. So what I say, it is taking the pain out of painting. And another thing is the cleanup, the overspray. You touched on overspray, transfer weight of the product. to the substrate and not having a lot of fallout. One of the pains of painting is going home and having paint all over you, cleaning paint up off your skin, cleaning paint up off out of your ears, your nose,
your nose,
everything. And so with HVLP sprayers, you can spray all day long in a booth and you don't have overspray all over you. You don't have a massive mess on the floor. I know you also touched on it, because we're really big on painting cabinets, kitchen cabinets on site. So you can take an HVLP sprayer easily on site.
Yeah,
You're
very
going
portable.
to create significantly less dust, silica dust, just overspray dust too. So your spray system has been, one of those game-changing systems for me, and I'm glad I'm actually transferring back to it, and spraying furniture has been it's made it actually really fun. You do have now what we came here to see is the Precision-6, and so that has just come out. So what's that all about?
Yeah, so we've been able to take the latest and greatest turbine technology from the manufacturers here in the States and be able to build that into a new, more powerful system. So the same basic features that you have built into your Precision-5 that you've had and loved, you now have that same machine with now 12% more power. So what that enables the painter to do is to be able to even spray heavier finishes and that with their with the HVLP, rather than having to use their airless, because that's the only thing that'll use that can spray it.
An experiment that we did years ago, with an HVLP sprayer, we sprayed some pool fences with an airless sprayer. We sprayed it with an HVLP sprayer. One pool fence took 3 gallons, the same with an HVLP. The other one, same size, took 17 gallons with an airless. So it's really the cost, in savings and product, using an HVLP is really going to make up the difference. Also, people have probably seen me, in some of my videos. I was painting a wrought iron fence right near a brand new car lot using oil-based product. Not being afraid of having overspray floating out there, being carried in the wind. Can you talk about just a little bit like overspray airless sprayers, run at a specific PSI, HVLP sprayers run at significantly less PSI, and how does that affect overspray?
Well, obviously the more pressure you have, the more force you have behind those particles coming out of the spray gun, and the more bounce back that you're going to get. So as those particles come out of the gun, if they have a lot of velocity behind them, it's going to be so much that they actually bounce off the substrate. It's kind of, I use an analogy a lot of a tennis ball. If you throw a tennis ball at a wall and you throw that ball overhand, that ball is going to come straight back at you. Well, that's similar to what's happening with the airless systems, is they're blasting those particles out of the gun so fast that a lot of that is coming right back at you. That's why you end up getting covered in paint head to toe. With the turbine system, it's more like tossing the ball underhand, so it hits the wall and basically just drops right at the foot of the wall, because there's no velocity behind it. It's not going to rebound off that substrate. And so by allowing the particles to still be finely atomized, you can get them to lay onto the surface without them bouncing off, and that's what makes it so much more efficient. But I think a lot of it also comes down to the controls. We talked a lot today about how much more control we have over the atomizer gun versus any kind of airless gun. Airless guns seem to be more getting dumbed down more or less nowadays, where you've got basically most of your control is in the pump and the tip. That's really the only controls you have, whereas with the HVLP, we've got not only different tip and air cap sizes, but then we can control the fan pattern widths within those nozzle sizes, and we can control the fluid flow much more accurately. And then when we start talking about pressures and that too, we're talking tenths of a PSI as far as efficiencies in that versus hundreds of PSIs with an airless system. So it's really kind of a whole different animal in general. And that's why I think, like for you, when you were talking about switching back and forth and getting frustrated and not finding originally your path with HVLP, because I think a lot of your audience also shares those same common concerns, and that is, it's a lot more complicated, and wow, is it going to be really tough for me to learn this? And I think as you found out, once you kind of understand the way it works and that, it really is very simple to get them and to use those controls to your advantage.
Yeah, it just took me, just a little bit of time. I mean, I would think, or say probably took me about like a week. I was working, spraying furniture in a booth, and I just committed myself to, learning it and figuring it out. And I'm so glad I did, because it's actually simpler and easier than an airless sprayer. And what's interesting is, airless sprayers, one of the biggest fears with airless sprayers is overspray. And that's, in other countries and stuff in Europe, everybody's afraid of overspray. Some of the major manufacturers have tried to, tackle that problem by creating low pressure tips, and those low pressure tips are running at 800 to 1000 psi, and that is low compared to what we used to run them at like 2200 to 2800 psi. The Apollo, I'm typically running at 6.5 psi.
Right.
So I mean, we're talking
night and day.
Massive difference, night and day. And so you just don't have the overspray problems. You don't have, the dust on the ground in the booth. I think it's incredible. I've been painting, in my booth now, pretty consistently for the last 3 months, and I vacuumed my booth one time. And I think if I was doing the exact same thing with an airless sprayer, I'd be vacuuming the booth like every 2 days. And I gotta say, it's like, once, I was committed to, getting back to an HVLP, it's been, simple and easy. So absolutely glad that I've made that transition back to HVLP spraying.
So yeah, I mean, basically, we were talking earlier about how you went through all of this process, and I think one of the greatest things that you now have is that knowledge coming from airless and going at HVLP, going through those frustrations that other people have done as well, and now your audience can benefit from that, right? And so instead of it taking them a week or two like it did you to learn the system, now you've got the knowledge coming right from Chris himself, who's gone through that process and can help you and walk you through because he understands where you're coming from, and he understands the frustrations, and that's a big part of it, right? And learning how to be able to make that crossover and feel good about it.
Yeah, I think that's part of my experience, with just painting in general. I started off painting, and I never had a journeyman I worked under. I just started my painting company. I had no idea, what I was doing. So as I was self-taught, it actually gave me this perspective of how not to do things, because I would do things wrong, and then it gave me a perspective of how to fix the things that I did wrong. And then once I fixed it, then I had the perspective of how to do it right. And so I had like 3 different perspectives, which the guys I would hire, after all my years of painting, we just teach them how to do it right, and they never like really experienced failing, because we just said, this is how you do it to have success, and they right off the bat started having success. And I think that's kind of one of the cool things about HVLP spraying now, is I've been just in there. I haven't had somebody looking over my shoulder saying, no, do this. I've been experimenting, learning. And one of the cool things about coming here, it's a simple thing, the overspray control valve. I had no idea that, I should be running it, all the way wide open. And I learned that from you. And now I get to go back, because I've been doing it, the opposite way. So I'll see the effect that it has by open it wide open, controlling the overspray by, the machine itself, the digital readout. I just like to learn that way, and just to give me a different perspective, and that way I can share my perspective to my audience of how I was attempting to learn. And I think that's the value of our platform too, where people can get on, because I read, we get thousands of comments, every month, and I read the comments, and I respond back to a lot of the comments, and it's kind of a platform where we can share ideas and stuff. So that's really cool.
No, it's an awesome opportunity, and I think what you guys do at Paint Life is really a great. It's that learning tool that you don't have in the contractor business, unless you're lucky enough to be able to journeyman under somebody else or have that apprenticeship. How else are you going to learn?
Yeah.
And there's nobody else really out there that I don't believe has your skill and experience.
Right.
And by sharing those experiences, your audience can learn 10 times faster. There's no reason for them to go through the same mistakes that you did.
Well, John, it's been an absolutely amazing experience coming here. I really appreciate you hosting us, man, serving us lunch, serving us coffee, man, and really giving us a tour of the inside look of Apollo sprayers and stuff. I've been a big fan of you. I've been a fan of your company and your products. So this has been great to come down here and see this and experience it, get some tips and tricks that I can share. Yeah. Stay tuned for some of the really cool how-to videos and frequently asked questions that John and I did. So I appreciate it, John.
Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate you coming out here. You and Lisa have been awesome. We appreciate you guys taking the time to come down here and see us in sunny Southern California.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching Apollo Sprayers with John Darroch here in Vista, California. Out.